Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Let's Talk Trackmania, brought to you by ESAC.gg. As always, I am your host, Scotty. I'm joined once again by Turbo and Eirik Holdal, and today we are going to have a great fun, jolly time talking about what's been going on the past few weeks. But before we do so, as of course this platform is brought to you by ESAC, we would just like to announce, of course, that the ESAC platform is now open for anyone to come and check out if they are interested in playing tournaments or organising some of their own, if they want to check it out or anything like that. So, as I said, esac.gg, and that's where you check it out. But guys, we have a hell of a topic in front of us, and I mean, well, you two are, of course, my chosen pair to be joining me on this. I really couldn't think of too much better people I would be liking to discuss this with. But how are you guys doing? You okay?
Yeah, let me start. So I'm doing fine after I was molding playing Trackmania with voice commands. Eirik has seen that one as well. Was hella fun though. Today was a stressy day, but I'm fine. I'm glad to be here. How are you doing? How was your weekend, Scotty?
My weekend was spectacular. What more can I say? I was well spoiled throughout the weekend. I had a great time. But how about you, Eirik? What have you been up to?
Well, it's been a long day at work as usual. It's sort of like a broken record every time we do this. I get more and more busy, and for every week I get some sort of more busy because I get another job opportunity. So this time, now I have 5 jobs in real life, and I just finished a 12-hour workday. Basically pushed through a pizza through my face just to get some energy within myself because this topic is gonna demand some energy from us, simply because it's gonna be a long topic, but also because this is a really important topic, not just for our insider circle that is so interested in esport, but this is also a topic that I mean can change the future of Trackmania as a whole. So I'm ready. I'm tired, but I'm ready as always.
Good to hear. Now, of course, the topic at hand we do have has been the recent revelations regarding Trackmania Grandleague. And for any of those who are watching this who are not immediately familiar with what this is about, Trackmania Grandleague is essentially the showpiece tournament of Trackmania at the moment. It's your quintessential World Championship style event, although it's not been known as a World Championship in its title, so to speak. But it is the premier event in Trackmania at the moment. It is one of which a lot of the players are aspiring to at the moment. It does have all of the best players. It has all of the best personalities being involved with it. And it in general is, as I said, the kind of pinnacle of Trackmania at the moment in terms of competition. As, of course, in years gone past, you would associate that name with something like an ESWC, perhaps, Trackmania World Championship, by any sort of other titles you would mean to call it. But Trackmania Grandleague as a whole has always been kind of surrounded by a measure of controversy. Namely the beta edition, of course, even when that first started out, implementing the new modes of which we've come to know now as the Champions mode. And, of course, coming through into the next season's Season 1, of course, the most recent one, implementing things like Open Grandleague and also implementing or at least refining the kind of idea for how they wanted to continue forward in their direction, so to speak. But, I mean, if I can just start off without kind of going into what has really brought this topic really to the forefront, because we've always talked about Trackmania Grandleague, you know, once every week or once every 2 weeks or something like that. I mean, how were you guys feeling about Trackmania Grandleague before all of this came out? I mean, while people were awaiting the rule book, while people were not entirely sure exactly what the format for everything would be. If I can start off with you, Eirik, I mean, how would you kind of sum up your feeling going into this season?
Well, I think I ended the last episode on a positive note, even though the overall episode of the Trackmania the Let's Talk Trackmania last time was negative. We ended on a positive note. I said, it's finally time to get hyped again. It's finally going to be a big event. And then you sort of end up with the rulebook, then it's own controversy. But I was actually hyped simply because I haven't felt a lot of hype. I felt rather that the hype overall in Trackmania has gone down. You feel it within the community. I feel it within myself. After the Zerator Cup, it's sort of been like a whole. And Trackmania Grandleague is the most prestigious tournament, or at least was. I guess we have to debate about if it still is it. But yeah, I was hyped to lead up to the announcement of the rulebook. So yeah, overall hype before it was actually released, at least.
Yeah, I mean, same for me. I would say I was hyped that there will be some adjustments from the mistakes maybe they have seen beforehand, that they will put in some other changes. And I was also hyped how the new players will perform in the Trackmania Grandleague. And I mean, it went so fast from the release now, and now it's September again. The game is now out 2 months to the point. And I mean, something has to happen, and Trackmania Grandleague is the biggest event, so I was really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people are looking forward to Trackmania Grandleague. I mean, it is a little bit of a polarizing event in the sense where it did divide some members of the community with some of its more controversial features and things like that. But in general, I suppose it was a bit like the Zerator Cup in the sense where you might not like it as much, but you'd still watch it because it's almost like an occasion, you know. It's almost like a kind of special occasion in Trackmania, I suppose it's fair to say. But again, unfortunately, the reason why this has become the topic of today, and essentially is going to take up pretty much all of our podcast today, is because of recent controversy that came out. And for any who are not familiar, basically, there has been, as I was saying, some controversies before, some rather divisive issues, namely the subject of points loss in the Champions mode, and the kind of comparisons between the playoffs mode and the normal league stage as a whole, and also kind of added discussions being had about disagreements and things like Open Grand League through the combine or through the seeding system or something like that. But I mean, now that we're kind of bringing ourselves onto the topic of the actual controversy itself, I mean, again, if I can kind of do this a bit chronologically almost, and if I can draw your guys' thoughts again before we did actually see the rulebook, pardon me, coming out. Was there any specific issues you wanted to see tackled in the rulebook? Any certain changes you wanted to see, or parts you were looking for further clarification on? I mean, if I can just start with you, Turbo.
I mean, the point loss was definitely something that was really a needle to my eye, if this is a speaking word in English, but that was really distracting me, because you can perform well on the 5 previous maps and you can be shut down on the last map because you finished 9th. So I was hoping that they will handle this kind of problem. But looking onto the rulebook now, to give the future aspect, now we were a little bit in the past. We have more point loss even coming in, where you can lose points on third and fourth round. I mean, it's only 50%, but still, I mean, you get punished more with that. And that was definitely not something that they have tackled. But before that, I mean, it is hard to tell. But yeah, I will just leave it there.
Am I supposed to continue? Yeah. Okay.
Just if you had any other points.
Sure. I can already go way back to when the Solary chap, he was saying that he was so positive about these rumors about the potential Trackmania Grand League season. So already then I was like, okay, I'm really hyped for this season. So I don't know if I expected maybe more prize money, maybe something else that was sort of going to take us off the edge. I don't hope that, or maybe Chap was hyped about the playoff system, but I don't know. I have to go back to ask him if there is something behind the scenes that we still don't know with the agreements of the orgs that are actually having a slot in it. But I guess also slowly but surely I had a hope that the point loss system would go back, or at least be the same as it was for the show match, where it was, if I recall correctly, just map 5 and 6 and not 4, 5, and 6 that was in the winter 2020 season. But like Turbo has mentioned, now it's 3 different stages. It's phase 1, you don't lose points on map 1 and 2. It's phase 2 where you lose 50% on map 3 and 4, and then it's phase 3 where you lose again 100% on map 5 and 6. So I hope stuff would change, but I guess the stuff that changed was not something I even had in mind that could possibly be changed. But anyway, I didn't have any too high expectations, but I just wanted it to be out. I guess I made that point clear last episode, that I felt it already is too late. So the main issue I had was I wanted it out rather than what was in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I can definitely agree with you in the sense where it was just the kind of general expectation going into this was, because, I mean, let's face it, Nadal haven't really been as well known for changing a lot of things up unless they felt it was much of a good idea. So, I mean, I personally wasn't expecting a lot of changes, and Turbo's going to fight a spider, so we'll let that be for now. But just in terms of this, I mean, I wasn't really going at.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, I think it.
Either Turbo died or the spider died. Fucking hell.
I'm
Smash.
Okay, right. We're back, guys. It was a small technical intermission there. But so I wasn't really expecting much changes going into with the rulebook being announced and everything like that. I mean, I don't really expect much from the deal in terms of changes. I feel if they were going to intend to make a lot of changes, they were going to have shaken things up after the beta edition and things like that. But I mean, if we can kind of shift over to what the controversy has actually been then. Now, I believe it was, what day are we on now? Tuesday. I think it was Thursday or Friday or something like that, where the Trackmania Grandleague rulebook, along with the Open Grandleague rulebook, was actually announced. Thank you. So the rulebook was announced, open to everyone to see exactly all of the kind of finer points of how the league stage is going to be working, clarification on of course, things like point loss, how people are going to be able to qualify for Trackmania Grandleague in future. So, of course, encapsulating all of the Open Grandleague formats and things like this as well. And leading into this rulebook, there was a significant amount of discussion based upon, again, what people wanted to be changed or what people wanted to be different or be looked into or something like that. So as we're saying, things like points loss. People were wanting to know what was going to be happening with the playoffs. Like, for example, if it was going to be incorporating the laps mode format a little bit more instead of just kind of defaulting back to a round/cup mode kind of thing. Well, at least me specifically, one of the issues I wanted to see tackled most was the seeding system for Open Grandleague. I found, I personally felt that was rather inherently flawed. But again, that's one that I was more kind of arguing off of my own back personally. But the nitty gritty of what has actually then caused the problem of this and caused such, I suppose you could say, ignited a little bit the discussions once again and kind of fired a little bit of the flame of and irked some people in many different ways, has been that when the rulebook was released, there was, at least if we ignore the playoff system for now, there were virtually no changes. Referencing, of course, the points loss previously, instead of people seeing really, the players won. Like the argument for points loss was that people didn't like to see such massive losses of points in the last map or so because they felt it wasn't a good indication of the player's performance. If they've won all the maps previous, they lose one and then it's game over. However, essentially now they have changed it to make sure that, as Eirik, I believe it was previously explaining, that now on 4 maps you have a potential to lose points. However, 3 and 4 you have a potential to lose 50% of your points if you're in the bottom 8, and 5 and 6. Map 5 and 6, you would then lose all of your accumulated points, and if you are then in the bottom 8, along with other parts such as I said, for at least my personal argument, so to speak, the Open Grandleague seeding system has largely not changed from what was initially an unintentional system, with some minor adjustments there. But the main source of complaint was the playoffs system that's going to be implemented into the new season. Now, to give you guys a bit of a run through as to what the playoff system is, guys pick me up on this if I do stray wrong at all. But of course, going into the playoffs, we'll have 8 players. We'll have 8 players, of course, top 8 of the Grand League in and of itself. And essentially, they were looking to kind of emulate or copy the format I believe was used in the Game World Duo Cup, if I remember correctly.
Exactly.
So thank you. So basically, with that cup, just to give you guys a quick run through, you would have a short amount of rounds on the map. So we're talking about maybe 3 rounds per map or something like that. And I believe 5 or 6 maps in a cycle or something like that. And essentially, what you would have to do to qualify for the next round, you would have to win one round, which would then enable your finalist status, and then you would have to win another round on the same map. As if you then have not won your round by the time the map is over, your finalist status will then reset. So going into map 2, you will have to essentially win 2 rounds in one map. That's basically the format. And going further in the later stages, it would be the same format but with 6 people, with the last 2 being eliminated. And same again with 4 people, with the last 2 being eliminated. And I believe the final, the grand final, was supposed to be a 1v1, I believe, and first to 3 maps, if I remember correctly. Again, I don't know if you guys can correct me at all on that, but essentially, it's a very short playoffs phase. It was looking to clock in round about, if the matches last a little bit on the longer side, we're roughly talking about a 2-hour broadcast, depending on pre-show breaks and things like that. But I mean, before we go on to, you know, what kind of problems people had with this, or what kind of arguments arose as a result of this, what was Eirik, for start with you, what was your first impression when the rulebook actually did come out?
Well, one of the good and then maybe bad things about being some sort of insider in Trackmania is that you knew already before it was out that players in Trackmania Grandleague had a problem with it. So I'm maybe not the correct person to ask, because I was, instead of maybe looking at it, let's go through the whole rulebook objective, let's see what I mean about it. Instead, I was like, okay, let's scroll down to what potentially can be a big problem that the players has voiced their opinion, to me at least, that they will eventually release something about. So I was like, okay, let's read through it. I think I would, in the end, have the same opinion about it, that I am a Trackmania fan. I like to watch a lot of Trackmania, so I don't know why you should end up with such a short amount of period where essentially you will crown the best player. We mentioned this is the most prestigious tournament. The Trackmania Grandleague released an official trailer today. They said the most prestigious tournament. Then I feel that you need more than 2 hours to crown a champion. At least when it's 8 players left and in so many different stages, you can somewhat, I don't know, luck is always the wrong word, because it's no luck when it's so good players, but sort of maybe risk your way into it, maybe flow your way into it. So the winner of this might not be viewed as the best player. If you talk about Trackmania Grandleague's Winter 2020 season, I don't think anybody is arguing if Carl Jr. is the correct winner there, simply because he had a chance to prove his performance so many times in the cup mode, and the feeling everybody left with was that, okay, Carl Jr. is the greatest of all time. And that only helps the event, that if you have enough time to actually let the best players battle against the best player to crown the best player, the event will be looked more prestigious, the viewer will enjoy it more, and essentially the reputation of this will be backed by the players and also the community. So simply by having it short then allows more room for, again, the luck is the wrong word, but somewhat of it, that maybe you end up with an underdog winning it that will have way less chances if it was a longer format, maybe double elimination bracket. And so yeah, that was my first impression, that why have it short? I don't see any good things about it. If you're a fan of Trackmania, you will watch it. I don't understand why we should target this particular final just to casual fans instead of maybe the fans that actually enjoy Trackmania already. So I don't know. Maybe it's good in the end for casual fans instead of hardcore fans. That's our own debate. But personally, I was disappointed because I'm also, at the end, a big fan of Trackmania.
I mean, just as well with that, Eirik, was there any other specific points of the rule book when it did come out? I mean, I understand you focused a lot there on the playoffs format and things like that. Was there any other specific points of it that when it did come out, for example, the points loss changes, or any of the changes, or therefore lack of changes, was at any point of that led to any sort of reaction for you? I mean, or anything like that, or what was your thoughts on the rest of what you digested, so to speak?
Well, one of the more surprising things about it was that, if you recall back to Trackmania Grandleague beta season, the main part of the prize pool was used for the group stage. So you sort of felt, even though Kappa won the playoff phase, that, okay, but he won way less money than Carl Jr. won at the group stage. So who is really the correct winner? Is it the guy who won the group stage? Is it the guy who won the playoff stage? So that's why I often refer to Carl Jr. won the group stage and then Kappa won the playoff phase. While for Trackmania Grandleague Winter 2020 season, all the cash prizes was put together for the winner of the playoff system. So the season was not feeling divided into two. It was sort of okay, it's qualification, and then we're going to crown it. But now they have gone back to where the group stage is actually bigger than the playoffs. I can look at my numbers. At 9,000 euros for the group stage, the playoffs will have 7,500. Yep. So again, you can end up with a feeling about who then is the correct winner. I guess most people would say, of course, the playoffs, but the group stage has a bigger prize pool. The group stage takes longer time. So I'm curious if now the playoff system will also make a stronger case for maybe the group stage is the most deserving. Now they have 6 weeks to show themselves. So I was surprised that I actually wanted to split the prize pools up again and not simply just do like Winter 2020 season, because in my eyes, that makes it easier for the fans to understand who is actually the winner. Where do you want to, what do you value the most? If you're so behind this playoff system, why not put every prize pool in there? So, I mean, in the end, it's probably better for players, but for fans, it might be a little bit confusing. And to me, it's also a little bit confusing, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Just also a little minute change just before I bring you in there, Turbo, is that also in the prize pool distribution now, as far as I have seen in the rulebook, there will no longer be I believe it was 100 euros for winning a map anymore. So that will not be part of, there will be no prize for winning a map other than points, essentially now. So that's also another point into the kind of prize pool distribution for things like the group stage compared to the playoffs. But let me kind of get your take on it, Turbo, about just essentially the same as Eirik. I mean, what were your thoughts when the rulebook came out and when you've seen such a reaction to it?
I mean, I was casting the Game Board Solo Edition, and there was this loser bracket. And I just take Hugo as an example. He didn't practice a lot, but he was just risking. He won 2 rounds and he just left the server. Yeah, GG, see you next week. You know, he didn't practice for it, and he just won. And I was like, what is happening? And just when I saw that, I was not. Yeah, I mean, you play 2 rounds and you could be through. I mean, it is a super weird format and something that we've not seen before. I mean, in the solo edition in the Game World Cup, of course, but before that, it is a bit weird. Also with I mean, you only get really to pick a map, and one weird thing was that the 4th person can pick map 1, so the 4th player could go through as first if the first map is really good for him. And it is super weird. So only 5th to 8th place gets punished for not picking a map, and it feels super rushed for me. I mean, Eirik said the same. I mean, you play maybe 20 rounds and you are the winner of the playoffs, so this could be the case at somewhat, but it feels super rushed. And I mean, the argument was to stay on a big stage, but to crown a playoff champion where the top 8 is qualifying to, I would demand a larger and longer tournament. That's my opinion about it, actually. So I don't really like that format.
Sure. I mean, something that was brought up in chat, thank you, Low Tech, for that. Also a kind of point about it, which I believe kind of shows the difference between this format and what formats are currently being used, or have been used in these sort of scale of events. So we're talking things like cup mode, we're talking, even if we turn the clock back even more, we're talking things like rounds mode. Essentially, you could clean sweep the event by winning 9 rounds. Now, in the typical kind of format, so shall we say cup mode, 100 points, 120 points, you can't even win 1 match by winning 9 rounds in a row. You would have to, if it's 100, you'd have to do 11, and if it was 120, you'd have to do 13. So essentially, you could win the entirety of the Trackmania Grandleague playoffs by, winning less rounds than it would take you to win 1 match, shall we say, traditionally, so to speak. So that's just to kind of indicate as to well, of course, that's not a very fair representation, as it's going to be a completely different style of tournament. And to kind of go on to the next part about this playoffs, as I suppose that's the point we've kind of picked up on the most, in specific reaction to the playoffs phase, if you guys were not aware, we've certainly been in discussion about it. In direct reaction to this playoff format, all 16 members, so each of the 16 players for Trackmania Grandleague, all co-signed a letter stating that they very much disagreed with the format. They didn't think it was a viable competitive format for the environment which Trackmania Grandleague was, so to speak, with the kind of precedent it set. It wasn't, essentially the playoff phase wasn't a good idea. They registered their concerns in that, and that they would be looking to work with Nadeo to find a different solution that will at least kind of maintain a bit more of the integrity of the competition itself. And I suppose that's maybe going out a bit of a limb there, but mostly one that both they would enjoy and that everyone else would enjoy. As in, it's not just going to be a 1 hour, 2 hour flash in the pan. It's going to be an experience. It's going to be an event like, we talk back on and like, that LAN event, yes, WC 2014 we might talk about, or the TMWC playoffs or something like that. You can go back and watch hours worth of footage on that, so to speak. But I mean, that has been, I suppose, the focal point of the argument, so to speak. And I suppose one of the things that got a lot of people involved in it is, of course, we're talking about very popular people. We're talking about very well-known personalities, the likes of Riolu and Spam, of course, Carl Jr., Scrappy, and as I said, that every single one of the 16 players, every single one of them signed this, stating that essentially they felt the same way. So, I mean, Eirik, you knew a little bit about that, of course, beforehand. As I understand, it was you that leaked that. Revealed that initially, I suppose. I'm just kind of getting a bit too far ahead of myself in leaks. But, I mean, talk me through the kind of process about that. I mean, when you were first finding out about the players' distaste towards this, and how that kind of went with your communication with these players.
Well, normally I am a guy who just in general speaks with people that are players, that are community members, that are fans of Trackmania, simply because it is such a small system that most of the time you even speak with them about non-Trackmania related stuff. And I'm not really a guy that goes to ask people about what is going on. Can you leak me something, or can you inform me about something that's coming up? This time it was actually the players that reached out to me saying that there is something coming up. We need to know if you are on board or not. I said, what do I say yes to? If I say yes, I need to see what I say yes to eventually before I release it. So I got the letter 1 day before. Then I can go through it myself. I said, sure, I can be your platform to it, because they said they wanted an objective platform, and I guess in Trackmania there is not really one besides maybe me and Trackmania News. So I knew about it, and already from it I knew that once I press schedule on it, because I was at work myself, so I couldn't be on Twitter myself once it was actually announced. So I just pressed schedule, and I was curious to see how much reaction it would get once I was back from work. That was 1 hour later, and it's safe to say it got a lot of reactions, but that is also because the players had some sort of organized themselves to saying that we will all stand behind it, not only the letter, but we'll also try to promote it. So I believe, I'm not checked, but I believe all of them retweeted it. I believe all of them tried to reach their own fan base. So that is the main reason why it got so much attention. But if people think I have something to do with the letter itself, I don't have given them any feedback. All I've done is say, essentially, yes, I can be the platform that essentially just posted to my Twitter account. So my Twitter account is hot. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, go to follow me on Twitter. But yeah, not any big concerns regarding or big information before it was announced. So it's not something that I have seen that isn't part of the document or that they wanted to discuss. I simply just somewhat got the finished product. So what you see today is also what I have seen, and I don't really know too much else, and I don't really want to know too much else. What am I lying or what?
Just a little
No,
bit.
Okay, I'm lying. What the fuck?
me bot, me Eirik.
Yeah. But I mean, since
Okay,
you're...
I
Yeah, I was just going to say, since you're back in Planet Earth, I suppose, yeah. As you were saying, sorry, it's not lagging anymore.
Okay, no, it's fine, yeah.
Yeah, what the fuck? This is super weird. I have like 400, but maybe something is up today. But anyway, I didn't know anything else besides these letters that you see today. So if you want information, you have essentially the same information as me. And if I want more information, I'm going to do the interviews publicly, not behind closed doors. All interviews I do is essentially on my YouTube channel. So I don't want to be a guy who leaks stuff. I just want to be a guy who informs stuff. So leak is the wrong word, Mr. Paul Gillies.
Hey, it's only Kappa that calls me Mr. Jealous. You need to get it right. But I mean, just to of course, I understand we've kind of got the process from there, but you did, of course, find out a little bit before the kind of general populace on there. So, I mean, you were essentially one of the first people outside the appropriate parties to hear about this, as I believe they drafted it up on the 20th of August, if I remember correctly. What was your first impression when you actually saw it?
Well, to some sense you are surprised, but to some sense you are not surprised. I can sum it up short. Why I'm surprised is essentially because you have all 16 players behind this. They're all 16 players voicing their opinion against Ubisoft Mondeo. I have mentioned it in the past. I have myself been vocal about the introduction of Trackmania Grandleague, the introduction of the point plot system, the introduction of mixed maps. But the main difference between that and this time is essentially that time you had key figures like you mentioned, popular people like Carl Jr., Spam, Riolo behind it. So the community backlash from it is not going to be as big because you then have fans of them. You have voices that are going to say, okay, we support Ubisoft and therefore you should support it. But now there's not a single player in the most prestigious tournament that are saying, okay, I'm not going to agree with you guys. I'm not going to sign it. All 16 players signed it. So I was like, damn, we actually have a big case here. We actually have something that essentially at the end, once I was reading first through it, I was like, damn, are they going to boycott it? Because I didn't see, reading through the three meetings, it was like, okay, they didn't change Ubisoft Nadeo's minds now. Is this letter going to change it? It was like, I would put it at 20% if something. So I was really curious about what this letter would lead to. And the reason why I disagree so much about the playoff system myself is more now because the players that are going to play it disagree so much about it. So it's not my personal disagreement with the playoff system that is my biggest problem. It's the way it all is handled with the communication about the feedback from the players regarding the playoff system. That is at least my biggest issue and was the biggest issue from the moment I read through the letter the first time.
Yeah, I mean, the players are not feeling treated right at this part, and I think that's a big like concern or like big shout out to them that they are like, no, till this point and not like further, and we want to get like some sort of our feedback involved into this next TMGL season as well. And this was completely not regarded by Nadeo at this part.
Sure. I mean, like, I'll be honest, part of the kind of, well, not issue, so to speak, but I mean, we have always had these kind of discussions, I mean, through various different forms of podcasts. I mean, back when we had just the ESAC podcast, and even in discussions me and you, Eirik, have had through any streams or casts we've done together, or whatever platform we've had, we've always kind of had the discussion about, you know, us not agreeing about things. But as you said there, the one kind of constant has been that the players have been supportive of a lot of the things that Ubisoft Nadeo have been putting forward for, you know, changes in their tournament. So, you know, players have been behind these changes, or at least they've. It always seems to be that you see players publicly coming out in support of it, and then you'll hear people saying, you know, in the background they never stop complaining about it, or these people really don't like it, but whatever they decide to put out publicly and privately, I suppose, is a completely kind of different beast there, so to speak. But I personally also was very surprised when they did all, collectively come together and put it towards Nadeo to basically say, look, no, this isn't good enough, in a sense, because these are people who have been more going with the flow. They have been conforming with these changes. I mean, I would at least be happy to go out on a limb there and say that not all of these players have agreed with all of these changes that have been happening. We talk about the additions gone past. I mean, as you're saying, things like the mix mapping, things like points loss, because essentially the argument was that it was supposed to be a beta season. They would find out what worked, what didn't work, go through players, go through community and things like that. And then going into season 1 would essentially be the refined product. But not only are you seeing players then coming together and, putting such a letter out there, but also through social media, I mean, particularly Twitter, you're also seeing players being, I'd say, more negative about it, but I'll instead rephrase that to say more outspoken about it. I mean, Kappa putting up a joke recently saying he's the defending champion since everything's just been a beta edition anyway. And things like that. But I mean, these are people who typically don't really speak out against Nadeo as much anymore. I mean, some people have in the past, of course, but this is different from what I'm used to from these Trackmania Grandleague champions, if I'll call them that. And it's certainly interesting, even with the new players coming in, that they feel comfortable to kind of put their own voice to this. But I mean, in terms of of course, as I said, this being the focal point of the kind of the controversy, so to speak, for the rulebook coming out. And unfortunately, it hasn't really been exclusive in the problems that people have been unearthing. As I said, it's not only the fact that they're coming in with this brand new playoff system, which I suppose is taking inspiration from the Gameward Solo edition, but also kind of morphing it into its own kind of thing, so to speak. People, have had their thoughts on that, and Eirik's gone. But yep, see Eirik, gone but not forgotten. But anyway, also the point, which is kind of, just to kind of hark back to that, what we were speaking about earlier, is also the point that people have had a lot of trouble with, is the fact that since the beta edition, when people didn't like what they saw, since edition 1, or season 1, sorry, when people didn't like what they saw, they would then give their feedback. They would give whatever information they could to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that's something I have, at least in past, tried to aspire to, is to essentially try and contribute towards making, putting detailed feedback in so people can understand exactly why people are unhappy about things. And not just saying to them, look, this is a problem, fix it, trying to suggest solutions and things like that. And that was mostly the reaction to problems that happened in the beta phase and problems that happened in the season 1 phase. But, I mean, how much of the problems, I mean, I suppose it's a bit of a kind of a short question, so to speak, but, I mean, Eirik, just if I can bring you back in now that you're actually with us again, how much of an issue would you say the fact that there has been next to no changes has been in a time where recently we have had people like Trilix coming and speaking out about, the fact that they didn't feel this was the right way to do things? And we've seen a lot of intense discussion. I mean, how do you kind of look at this from Nadeo's side of things when they've then decided to come out and say, we're not changing anything, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I made an own video about Trilix and NBK speaking up about it, and I said, sure, it's good to put attention around it, but the key point should be that the players themselves are speaking up about it. I said, I hope it's what's going to change, but I didn't hope it's what's going to change simply because Trilix or NBK spoke up about it, because then essentially in the future, you need once again big outside people to speak up with instead of the players that actually play it. So, I mean, now that I think about it and saying that I was surprised by seeing that the players spoke up about it, and I read through it now, that letter again, the players supported Trackmania Grandleague in the first place because okay, we don't really know what it's gonna be, but now at least Ubisoft on there is on board. Maybe this can be good for the game. Maybe this can be good for my own career. So that's essentially the reason, at least what I got from them, why they supported Trackmania Grandleague in the first place, even though, like you mentioned, they could have agreed with the point loss system or the mixed maps, but overall they supported that Ubisoft and there was entering it. But now they state that they not only have a problem and are scared about the playoff system in this season, they are scared about Trackmania Grandleague as a whole. And if you're scared about Trackmania Grandleague as a whole, you're scared about Trackmania Esport. And if you're scared about Trackmania Esport, you're scared about your own career in this. So the players are speaking up, not because they want to be like, okay, we disagree with Ubisoft and Deo. They want to speak up because they want Trackmania to be as good as it can. And at the moment, Trackmania Grandleague is the most prestigious tournament. So if that is the most important part that needs to be good for Trackmania Esport to move forward. So I hope that both Gillies and SoftTB are going to listen to the players, because they need to understand that they have supported them once they needed support, but now they speak up against them, maybe because they need to be spoken up against. So SoftTB has maybe a more inside view about the players' profiles, the players' mentality. So maybe he should be the one from Ubisoft and to put his foot down and say, hey, we're going to listen to players. Hey, we're going to take the feedback into consideration. So once again, I hope that the players are the ones who is getting listened to, not essentially big streaming profiles. I saw some people suggesting, where is Serrator when we need him? I mean, why do you want him to come in and say everything? Because then we need him every single time. If you're going to fix a problem, you need to fix it at the bottom, not at the top, because then at the top you need to change it every time. So I really hope that the players are going to be listened to, because they have supported this tournament in the first place, but now they're speaking up against it, and essentially for a correct reason. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's your kind of thoughts been on this situation? I mean, talking at least post we received Nadeel's response, Turbo, what was your kind of thoughts about seeing the letter as a whole and the community's general reaction to it?
I mean, the players know the best what they are facing up against. They have played the first step, or like the first season, or the combine match, or the OGL, or the OGL. So I think the opinion of them matters the most, because I mean, of course, Softy can say something. He's also not the worst player, but in general, he doesn't know how it feels to play a combine match. He doesn't know how it feels to lose points when you know, oh, I can't go to the playoffs. Maybe I'm gonna disappoint my organization or anything like that. But yeah, the support behind that was, I think I've never seen something in a game like that a community is holding together that strong, that everyone is stating their opinion and like supporting the players and standing behind them. But we also have gotten some not so nice reactions from the other sides, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it has developed into a situation which has been quite negative, and that's something we're going to go on to a little bit later on as to how the community reaction has been, I suppose, in a way, fueled the fire into, typical issues we've had when we've been trying to discuss issues with, Gillies directly, as I suppose he's the focal point when it comes to dealing with these sort of problems. But something I kind of just wanted to, because I guess it makes it easier for us to kind of keep track of when we kind of go through events as they happened. I mean, just to pick up on what you were saying, Turbo and Eirik as well, just a bit later. Now we saw all of this letter. We saw this letter being written and being publicly, publicly revealed by you, Eirik. And we saw your platform being used, their platforms being used. They all combined their, shall we say, social media power to get this message out there that they were not happy with how things were, and they wanted things to change. They wanted essentially a better tournament for them to play in, for other people to watch. Now, it was shortly announced after this that SoftTB had put a notification in the Discord channel that Nadeel would have an updated rulebook as of the next, I believe it was a few days or something like that. Now, the next rulebook then came out, and there had been no changes whatsoever. So the only part of the rulebook which was updated was the addition of another tournament of which Nadeo planned to host. But I don't really see that as being so relevant at the moment in terms of our discussion about the rulebook, since it's essentially for a different tournament. So just in terms of the Nadeo's response to the concerns of the players then being to not change anything whatsoever. Now, Turbo, you're saying, of course, the players know best what it's like to play in a tournament like this.
Yeah.
We ourselves have all been deeply involved in Trackmania Grandleague, either through Open Grandleague or specifically for each of us in terms of casting the Trackmania Grandleague stages, be it any involvement in the beta edition, but primarily through Season 1, and hopefully, of course, for you guys going into Season 2. But in terms of this, Turbo, we've been involved in this as well. We've seen how this works firsthand. We've been right there on the front lines watching it. We've been in discussions with the players through us, you casting for Pac, myself casting for Massa. We've been in these players' streams. We've heard their thoughts, and now most recently we've seen their direct thoughts on some of these, parts of the rulebook being put into a specific letter. So when you saw Nadeo then coming back and saying, "Okay, we've seen your letter, we're not changing anything," how did you then feel, I don't know, for the players, or just, having seen all the discussion that this then evoked, how did you feel about that when you saw that Nadeo had no response but to say that nothing's going to change?
I mean, first of all, it was Softy just after the letter saying, we have informed players about the decisions regarding the letter. Those decisions will be shared publicly through an updated version of the rulebook available in the upcoming days. I thought that they will definitely change something, or the players will get punished for everything. There were the two options that were coming to my mind. But I mean, also looking onto all this Twitter thing, they try to compensate the decision of making it this, I don't know what mode, this playoff mode, with the actual Trackmania League World Cup, which has, in my opinion, it has to do something with that, because the top 8 of TMGL and the top 8 of the OGL will...
It's the open qualifiers, not OGL, so it's going to be two separate qualifiers. So, yeah.
Okay, it's the open qualifiers. I'm sorry. They will qualify, but it has nothing to do with the actual playoff phase. So I was questioning myself, what has changed now? What have they changed now? I'm not sure if there's any change concerning the playoffs or anything, but then it's a joke. Sorry. It's a joke for me, because players really put out their serious concern. They documented everything. They have talked several times to Softy, by Spam and Kappa being the speakers for them, and they have not taken those advices seriously. So I think it's a issue that they are facing here, that players are not happy about what is happening in the playoff phase. And I mean, will they be motivated? That's also the question. Will they be motivated playing the playoff stage now or not? That's also a thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you were answering previously, you were talking quite about how, these players do have, it's not just concerns about this, I don't like that, or I don't like this. I mean, these are players who have Trackmania's interests at heart, because, of course, it directly affects them. I mean, if Trackmania Grandleague was to crash and burn because it was not interesting for people to watch, or it wasn't a very good tournament, then that directly affects them. These players are being picked up by organizations directly as a result of being in Trackmania Grandleague. Well, at least some of them, to an extent. Some of them are having their contracts based upon their participation in Trackmania Grandleague. You're seeing a lot of these players not playing in anything but Trackmania Grandleague. So this is a very, very important event for them. And with you saying a lot there about how, it's very important, and I suppose not necessarily specifically important, but it's very significant that these players all kind of came together and then said something together about it. What was your then thoughts when you then did see that, as I just said to Turbo, that Nadeo turned around and said that no, we are not actually changing anything?
Yeah, it was weird, and it was weird the whole way, because Every day since SoftTB tagged everyone in the Trackmania Grandleague Discord, I was somewhat expecting to go like, okay, when do I need to be ready to record a video? Because I actually wanted to address this topic to the community. Maybe they don't want to read through a whole rule book. Maybe they don't understand where to find the information. So I simply wanted to let people know the most important things by recording a video. So every single day I was waiting to do one. But instead, one of the days you got like Gillies actually announcing, now that we look back at it, the Trackmania World Cup. It was like one of the weirder tweets. I guess I can say the weirdest tweet I've seen on my own Twitter feed. So then you knew, okay, what is this rule book going to be? Is the playoffs now going to be a World Cup? Or are they teasing us or are they tricking us? So I was really curious, but I guess I also thought, like Turbo mentioned, that either the playoff phase is going to change or the players are somewhat going to be punished. I don't know too much about the inside the details, and I don't want to speak too much about it, but maybe they have some discussions between Ubisoft and the players themselves that are not publicly. Maybe they somewhat have been punished. Maybe they somewhat have been told that the playoff phase for Winter 2021 season will be different. So, I expect a change. But once it was announced, the rulebook, it was like, this is one of the weirdest way to announce a World Cup. You have people expecting a change. You add a World Cup, doesn't change the playoff phase. Then people are displeased with the whole rulebook, and there is less hype for an actual World Cup that is returning. We all remember the hype, or I hope we all remember the hype once Trackmania World Championship 2018 was coming back. People were like, oh, finally we get the World Championship back. This is so far away from that feeling. So if you look at the bigger picture, you want I'll sum it up. The playoff phase is short, so the players have a problem with it. Instead of fixing that problem they have with it, where it doesn't feel like maybe the best player win it, they instead add a World Cup. So the problem they had with the prestigiousness of, I don't know if that's the English word, but anyway, the sort of prestigious feeling about the playoffs and the Trackmania Fall 2020 season is now going to be bigger because now they added our own tournament. So how prestigious are the Trackmania Fall going to be viewed as? How serious are the players going to take it? Because now they know, okay, even though I don't do well here, it's the Trackmania World Cup. I can call call myself a Trackmania World Champion. So I'm really, really curious now that we head into September, and then eventually, once we're going to crown a winner of this, how serious they are going to think about it, because I don't see this updated version to help this sort of event in particular. Maybe it even devalues it even more. So, not helping at least.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I see exactly what you're saying there with it. I mean, personally, I also thought that it was a very, very strange and bizarre time to announce the World Championship in such an atmosphere of negativity, which was enveloping Trackmania at that time. Anxiety from not knowing what to expect from the new edition after there'd been so many complaints. What's going to change? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? People being relatively unhappy, or even people who were happy with it. You were seeing arguments popping up in Discords left, right, and centre. People disagreeing with this again. Once again, I mean, before, I suppose, we only really had the points loss topic, which was extremely divisive, and rightly so. There's a lot of arguments for and against that, but we are seeing another massive topic, which is, again, I would say, I mean, I suppose for the points loss, you've got a bit more, it's a bit more equally kind of distributed for and against for a lot of the people. But the general opinion for the playoffs phase, it seems to be very negative. And I do personally agree with you there then, Eirik, when you bring... You want to announce a tournament you want to announce a great new project at the best possible time, when people are in a great mood for it. Say they've just watched an amazing grand final, then you announce a tournament, people are invested, people are thinking, maybe I want to try that, or they're thinking, maybe I want to go and watch that, or something like that. You don't announce it while people are furious, while people are disenfranchised with you, while people are disconnected. from. They don't understand what's happening. They don't understand why things are happening. That's not when you come out and say, "Oh, here we go. We've got a great world championship, but by the way, we're not solving any of the problems that you asked for." You know, like, I mean, I know I kind of dramatise that a little bit, but essentially you kind of need to look at it in the way where the players have asked for something, and Nadeo says, "No, we're going to give you something else." You know.
I mean, they haven't asked about it. If you read through the letter, they say we demand a change. So I'm really, really curious once I'm going to speak about the players, what they think about it, because they wasn't like, I hope you will take time to do a change. They said we demand a change. So that the change didn't come, or are the players going to look at the addition of the World Cup as a change? I mean, I'm really curious. I'm gonna try to do the interviews with all of the players. Maybe one already tomorrow. I think I have Bren's schedule at least, but I'm really gonna try to listen to the players, what they think about it. But yeah, continue. I'm not gonna be a guy who interrupts too much, but demand is such a much bigger word than ask, right?
It's not only a much bigger word, but it's also a much more important word. I mean, ask, you're giving the option there, but if demand, you're providing your ultimatum. You know, you're saying to them, you change this or else. You know, like you know, if you're demanding someone to get out of your way, that's not a nice. Well, that's a much more blunt way of asking. You know, but the one main question I kind of had that I would love to have one of the players to kind of ask to is what now. You know, what do you then do next? You've played your card. You've played your card to say that we demand a change. We not ask a change. We demand a change. You've all signed this together to say that you're unhappy about it. And when it first came out, I mean, one of the first long posts I put at the very least over the weekend was that the players are the prime people in position to do something about this. Now, I'll go into the kind of community attitude and the kind of community reaction a little bit later on, but the community have not got as much of an effect on Trackmania Grandleague decisions. That's been relatively clear. You know, people have argued about a lot of these points for quite a long time. That's not led to any changes. Now, the players all arguing for a point has not led to any changes. Now, if the community, like the Trackmania community, the people who are invested in this, if they stop watching all of this, that will give you a dent of a significant amount of viewers, for example. But you're still going to have people like Trillic streaming. You're going to still have Solary streaming. You know, you're still going to have all of these people streaming. You're still going to be Trackmania Grandleague are essentially still going to be getting what they want, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of people watching their tournament. The Trackmania community isn't big enough to have a very, very big drop in that pool, so to speak. At least as to what I've observed of, you know, people who tune into, like, say, Virtual or myself or Turbo when we're doing, or Geek, sorry, as well, when we're doing the Trackmania Grandleague casts of Season 1. Now, the players, on the other hand, if one of the players then says, you know what, fuck this, I'm not playing as a result of these changes. I disagree with you to so much of a point where I'm not going to play this tournament, then that causes a problem, because you don't want to start a tournament with 15 people. You know, you've had all this 16 orgs, 16 teams, you know, 16 players, 16 streams and all this kind of shit. Like, and then you have one of the players making a very public mess of that situation. But, I mean, I personally don't think that's going to happen. I think that there's too much at stake for the players. Like I said, that they're not playing, there's not other tournaments they can go and make a lot of money from in Trackmania. You know, for example, if Massa stops playing Trackmania Grandleague, you know, Big aren't going to be paying them, you know, many hundreds, if not even up to 1,000 euros a month to play Track of the Days, you know? Like, and it's the same with all of these other orgs that have got, you know, agreements with players that are, you know, getting to significant numbers. I mean, we're not just talking about players getting hardware deals nowadays, you know, or they'll get, you know, some shit sent to them from fucking Zowie or something like that. We're talking about players who are getting a significant amount of money from their organizations. That is conditional based upon them being in the best tournaments. So, I mean, I suppose it's a bit hard to say, since I suppose you've not had these sort of interviews yet, Eirik, and I suppose this is a question we'll find out more about in time. But I mean, what do you think's next for the players in this? Do you think they're going to be satisfied with this edition of the World World Cup, World Championship, whatever it's going to be called? Do you think this is going to lead to some further action from some of the players? You know, say, I don't know, Marson doesn't really get that much from his org, if he does even have an org. I mean, we don't even know that for sure yet. Or, you know, say last season Scrappy wasn't getting anything from Existence, so he's not getting anything that he's then giving up, so to speak, only an opportunity. Then, you know, what then happens? Do these players then boycott it? Do these players then, you know, display their displeasure privately, publicly, speak out against it? I mean, Eirik, what do you think's next for these players who have, as I said initially, played their card and shown their hand?
Well, I mean, you mentioned boycott, but you also mentioned that, I mean, the big loser, if there is a potential boycott, is going to be the players. I mean, if you are essentially saying, as a solo, let's say that one player says, I'm boycotting without really talking to the others or without getting them on board, he's essentially also saying, I'm semi or at least fully retiring from the competitive scene in Trackmania, because this is by far the biggest platform to earn some sort of living out of it. This is by far the biggest platform to earn prize money. This is by far the easiest way to get into an org that pays you salary. So if you're one guy saying, I disagree so strong about it that I don't want to play it, you're at the same time also stepping down as a competitive player, because then what is left for you is smaller tournaments like Pittsburgh, PKR, Cometo Corp, Serrator Cup, but that is our own different topic. But if there is a boycott and if they want to pull like a really ballsy move, then all 16 players are going to say, we boycott this, we don't going to play it. But then I imagine that maybe Ubisoft and there is like, okay, fuck it, we stop everything in Trackmania Grandleague. So what essentially did you win? You didn't improve anything, and the players are not. Again, I'm going to bring back the point. They want Trackmania to be bigger. They want Trackmania to be better. And if they essentially say boycott, like in poker, you sort of need to expect what the next move is then for players. If I do this, what do the opponent do? The opponent in this way is Ubisoft and Deo. If they boycott, either Ubisoft and Deo is going to say, okay, fine, it's easier for us to find 60 new players than it's for you to find a tournament like this. Or they're going to say, okay, we fold. We're out of the esports side of Trackmania. Enjoy what was in 2016, 2017. So I really, really don't hope it's going to come down to a point of boycott. I guess we're going to end up, the easiest way is just to say that it's going to be like it is. Ubisoft and they'll get their will. The players, someone has to feel forced about actually playing it. So I guess they show their hands, but once Ubisoft and they are going to put more chips to the table, the players are going to look at do I really want to risk it all on this particular case? I have some players in mind that might do it, but I'm not going to. They have to leak it themselves. I'm not going to leak anything about potentially standing up against it. But I don't expect any big changes or any big union to go against it. It has to be maybe one single hero that stands up. And if so, he get my retweet if he do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very hard topic. I hope that there won't be any boycott as well. I mean, either it's no person or all 16, but this won't happen, surely. And I mean, in the contract of the player, I assume they're standing that they have to play the TMGL. That's what I just can guess about that they have to play it. And I mean, if they're not playing it, then they're also losing their organization. They're losing their spot in the TMGL, and yeah, they have to settle down with smaller tournaments. And I mean, it's a lose-lose situation for the player there. I mean, they can set a statement to say to people that they have to boycott or should boycott this event because of this and that, but I don't see that happening. I
mean, now that you mentioned deals with orgs and such, there is a final point that the players could do, and that doesn't involve directly Ubisoft and Deo. They could go to their own org and say, hey, what do you think of it? Hey, if we once again try, and now say that not the 16 players are against it, but I think it's 14 orgs at the moment in Trackmania Grandleague that says, we are against it. Ubisoft from there is going to have such a much bigger problem if 14 orgs pull out, because essentially probably the 14 only orgs in Trackmania. But then again, the only thing you then lose, you have essentially then either the removal of Trackmania Grandleague, or they're going to change some small things. So I don't hope it's going to escalate. I really don't. But at the same time, Ubisoft and they put themselves in the situation of allowing it to escalate because they didn't change what the players wanted to change. So it's sad that there's so few big tournaments in Trackmania, because the players are somewhat feeling forced to play what there is to play, and sometimes then the organization has too much power, maybe, and this is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, that kind of brings us on to a kind of another side to this, which has been the community reaction to this, and the community reaction, if we're honest, in general, has been very negative. And I both mean that in the sense that people are not very happy about it, and I also mean very negative to the point where it's getting inflammatory. I mean, people are very angry about it. You know, players are angry about it. You know, people who are just on the outside are very angry about it, and that's resulted in people. That's resulted in more activity than we see from normal, shall we say, through Gillies' Twitter specifically. That's resulted in a lot more of these kind of twitlongers than we're normally used to, a lot more of these kind of bigger Discord posts about this. But in general, from the posts that we are seeing, if we kind of gauge like the mood of Trackmania, it's kind of been plateauing a little bit for a while now, but it's then like after this kind of mess, so to speak, it's sunk. You know, the general mood of people who are invested in this TMGL idea in any form, watching, you know, casting, playing, you know, whatever their involvement is, they are feeling worse about Trackmania Grandleague after this has happened. You know, and even, as I said, even people who do enjoy the format, people who think it's a good idea, they're seeing everyone else being very negative about it. They're seeing all 16 of the players, maybe some players that they're following, players they're idolizing, saying, we don't think this is a good idea. And then when they look onto the Discord, you're seeing Discords being lit up by people saying, we don't like this, we want to change, this isn't a good idea. People making fun of Gillies' responses and things like that. Making memes out of it and all the kind of rest, and it's resulted in quite a messy situation. And as I said, it's well, I suppose the word I would use, it's a very flammable situation at the moment. But just if I kind of, you know, before I kind of go and monologue myself on this at all, because I do get quite good at that sometimes, but in this was something. I mean, I believe you posted it on Twitter, Eirik, but something I put about how the feedback is taken by Nadeo, and one of the main kind of points I would like to bring up for you guys to discuss. So when the viewers raised what things they thought as an issue, so after beta season, after season 1, very little or no changes were made. Okay. When the players for the first time stepped up and collectively said something was wrong, no changes were made. Now, what do people need to do? What needs to be done for, I mean, Gillies or Softy or whoever it is that's in charge of making these decisions? I would put the pinnacle to be Gillies, as far as I understand. Through the one of the Twitter messages he put, it is his job to make decisions. What needs to happen for Gillies to then say this, to Gillies to then change something? Does it need to be an entire community and all of its players then, you know, boycotting it? Does it need to, well, before I dramatize that too much, does it need to be continued negativity? Does it need to be players boycotting? What needs to happen for things to change, do you guys think?
I think what needs to change for Gillies to change his mind is that he actually sees it in reality. He is so determined to see this idea played out in real life that essentially he goes against 16 players, he goes against the community. So what is gonna for this playoff and this particular event for changes that is gonna be happening? I think we need to see it firstly. I think he personally just want to see it, and for all costs that it's going to be. So I don't think it's going to help if you bring in Serrator and bring in Sardosh, maybe. But then again, I don't want it to be like we have to bring them in every time. But Gillies has mentioning that every argument that is for change, you used that as argument in mixed maps and in Trackmania Grandleague once it was firstly announced as well that, oh, you disagree with that, but I remember also the competitive players back in 2008, 2009, they disagree with me bringing in cup mode, and now everybody like cup mode. So maybe he has this idea that sometimes he knows better than the community what there is. And I have sort of admitted to him that I was wrong about the introduction of the mixed maps, because now I enjoy it more now than I did once it was firstly announced and was my first impression of it. So I think he needs to see the playoffs play it out, and maybe if the 16 players then are going to be disagreeing with it, maybe it's going to change then. But once you first introduced it, I guess it's harder to remove than it is to remove at the moment. So I don't know if that's a good thing, that he needs to see everything and he wants to try out everything. But I guess that's also a bigger debate. Maybe we should just try out everything. Maybe we should see what a potential sort of upside down thing in Trackmania can do, because I guess we all agree that Trackmania is not at the place where we want Trackmania to be at the esport. It's still undercover esport. We want it to be mainstream. So maybe sort of flip up between the whole community and all the players, and the Gillies having his way. Essentially, in 5 to 10 years, going to be viewed as the greatest move of all time, where everybody was against the CEO, but he managed to pull it off. I wouldn't put my money on it, certainly not. But I mean, nobody of us is going to put the money on this going to working out. I mean, everybody disagree, or not everybody. I don't want to put everybody under the same boat, but most people disagree with the playoff system. But sum it up short, I guess I mentioned in the first sentence, I could have shut up there. Gillies needs to see this happening for him to change anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty hard. But I mean, you mentioned a good point there. I mean, we just have to compare, I think, between season 1 and then maybe the season 2 playoffs or whatever. And then he will see on his own that the thing before that, the cup mode thing, I'm just going to mention this straight away now, is just better than this other thing.
Yeah, but how can we know it? I mean, I also said
that's true.
I said that tech is, because I was on this TMWC high. I was still high for 3 months. That tech is the greatest thing ever. I was in Paris, so my first world champion crowd. Nothing is gonna stop tech, and essentially now, 1 or almost 2 years later, it's gonna be like, I'm totally fine with mixed maps. Maybe not the identity itself, but the feedback of, or the format of mixed maps. And so I have personally been also at the point where I have been so personally disagreeing with someone, and then at the end I have to say, okay, maybe you were right. So maybe I'm overall stupid, but the reason, and once again I want to address, is that I don't speak up so much about this because I personally have a problem with it. I try to, most of the time at least, keep my own opinion about, or outside at least my own YouTube channel. I want to address stuff that is happening in the community. And that is why I'm covering this story, because the players themselves are speaking up against it. But how do we know that? Nobody has seen it. So how do we really know that this is going to flop? Maybe it's going to be the perfect opportunity for casual fans to get into Trackmania. And we need casual fans. We need new fans in Trackmania. So maybe, but again, I don't put the house that I don't have on it.
Yeah, I mean, but can you compare the mix style between tech with the actual like playoff phase? Because there is so much more on the line, and we've seen that players can adapt to the different styles. And for me, it is like I've seen this one already. I've seen this play style, and there's a player practicing for, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, and just bombing out 2 rounds, and he's through. And I think it is just an unfair system where you just risk it more, and you can just win the event by just not practicing too much because the pressure is not on your shoulders. But imagine you're practicing for, I don't know, 4 weeks straight, 2 hours every day, and then you are so pressurized and you're making a mistake, and it is decided in 2 or 3 rounds. I think it's not a fair system at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, if I can kind of draw it to another side of things. I mean, what a lot of people have. Well, I don't like to speak on behalf of a lot of people. More if I'll just kind of say my thoughts on it and what I believe other people have mentioned as being issues on this is kind of being a deep-rooted issue, which has affected Trackmania in some small ways, some large ways for quite a few years now. And just to get your kind of thoughts on it, guys. Now, so if we cycle back to the period I like to talk about quite a lot, which is 2016. So 2016 going into 2017, pardon me. So there was a few issues going into the Mania Planet World Cup in 2016, but they were dealt with. There was a tournament that then happened. But coming into 2017, normally, of course, these tournaments are held around about October, end of September, October, November, that kind of 3-month period, so to speak. That was World Championship time. That was when the qualifiers would start coming out, the information would start coming out. But that's when at least a lot of people who are kind of in this generation of Trackmania kind of first saw kind of an issue being had, so to speak, a kind of major issue, which was, of course, that there was going to be no World Championship in the year of 2017. But one of the main problems during that time is that everyone was asking if there's going to be a World Championship in 2017, but no one was saying anything. No one was getting an answer. I seem to remember that the only answer we got was, I think it was Ali Noah came on. I think it was Trackmania Discord, if I remember correctly, and said, this was like, October or something like that in 2017, and saying that we are not having a World Championship this year, but if you're interested in other good tournaments, you can go and check out this cup. And has gave the example of a cup no one has ever heard of that was kind of sparsely run, so to speak. So it's just as if they've kind of thrown out, like, the lamb to the slaughter, so to speak, because no one knew about this cup. And I mean, sure, that's great exposure, but it wasn't a cup that had a lot of people behind it. So it wasn't something people were interested in. Certainly no comparison to fucking World Championships, and we then kind of go through the time a little bit, and then you have one of the more kind of points of contention was when the Mania Planet 4 update came out. Mania Planet 4 update, of course, came out for Trackmania 2 Stadium in 2018, if I remember correctly, or late 2017, around about then. And one of the problems a lot of people had with it is that, for example, it dropped right in the middle of a tournament. It dropped in the semi-final phases of a tournament. So completely destroyed all of the server configurations because, of course, it wouldn't work, and because the people back then like Fast and Azeko and things like that hadn't had the chance to adjust to this, so people could not play matches because it's just been dropped without anybody being told about it. And coming closer to things like Trackmania Grandleague being another prime example, the beta edition was announced 1 week before the qualifiers, so no one's got time to plan off any time. No one can, book holidays or something like that. So for the open qualifiers, that messed up a lot of people. But instead of me just sitting here giving, a bunch of fucking, an encyclopedia of examples of what the problems with this is, the main problem has been communication. If I could sum it up in one word, it's been communication. And it's been when people are asking questions to Nadeo, it's not that they're not getting the answer they want or anything like that. It's they're not getting answers at all. The only times I can really point to where I feel there has been strong communication was the start of, I believe it was the beta season of Trackmania Grandleague, when Gillies spent a lot of time in the Discord for, I think, the first 2 days or something like that, and was talking with everyone about their concerns and everything like that. I mean, sure, I don't expect the CEO to be sitting in Discords every day answering people's questions. But all I'm just saying is that's when when I personally felt there was good communication. We also in this podcast even were talking about how the communication was extremely poor for the new game coming out. It was getting to the point where I believe I put up a message on the private Ubisoft forums like 1 or 2 weeks before the game was due, like, what's happening? We've not heard anything in like a month and a half, and you're supposed to be releasing your new game. And then they come out, I think it was a week before the game was released, saying, yeah, we're delaying it, yeah, we're doing all the rest of this, dropped a trailer, and all the rest of that kind of shit, you know? Like, the communication has always been a poor suit for Nadeo. I think that's hard to argue against. I'd be interested if you guys disagree with that at all. But now that's becoming even more apparent. So not only are people asking questions and they're not getting answers they like, people are asking all the time about the point system. People are asking all the time about playoffs. People are asking all the time about OGL, for example. But Nadeo then come out and say, we're not changing anything, but they're not saying why. They're not saying, we want to keep this point system because of this, because, you know, we find it exciting in this way, or, you know, we think it's a good idea. Or, for example, why do we have 16 streams for a tournament? Nadeo could just come out and say, it's so that we can maximise their exposure. And that deals with it. But they do not respond to that question, to just give a simple answer like that. So I think communication is a massive problem in Nadeo. I understand they're taking steps to rectify that. But what do you guys think about the communication in Trackmania in general and how that's affected the situation with either the lack of communication or the only communication coming through Hillis's tweets, which have been a problem in and of itself, I would say?
I think the lack of communication is definitely the issue here, because, I mean, if I, for example, asked Softy for something TMGL related, it feels like he was always under stress and or under pressure and couldn't do anything. There needs to be like another person who deals with that, or like some sort of members who can like have like a spreadsheet of questions where you can answer them. But also the part where we didn't get a not justification, but like an answer to with the like 16 cast. There was like questions in the room that have not been answered, and this creates a sort of distance from the community to to the actual org behind that. This is Nadeo at this part, and this is definitely not good. I think transparency and also answering questions and like saying, yo, I'm here for you or anything like that is really important to really like create a healthy base between the community and the developers.
Oh, Eirik's just disconnected as he was about to start talking there. That was perfect timing for you there, Eirik. But I mean,
Thank you.
You were just going on to speak, I believe.
I mean, Discord doesn't want me to speak, but if you talk about communication regarding the sort of some people say drama is the wrong word, but I'm not good enough to English to find a more suitable word, so I'm going to use drama. But the problem hasn't really been about communication regarding why they maybe want it. We have mentioned it multiple times in this podcast that Gillies and then Ubisoft and they wants this to be, because they want it shorter. They used the example of the football format that you can sit down and watch the final in 2 hours. So, and that is again coming through his private profile. But you mentioned him being active in Discord. Now he is active on Twitter. So we have some way of getting answers. If we agree with them, if there are the most suitable answers, maybe not. But I guess I mentioned what I meant or my feelings about communications in the last podcast. And I guess I had a bigger problem with the communication then because it was non-essential. We still had no information about the rulebook. We still had no easy way for a casual fan to find out about Trackmania Grandleague or Open Grandleague. So now I guess it's more of a fact to my problem in this particular podcast. Sounds like I have a problem in each and every podcast. Is again that even though you communicate, and they have communicated multiple times with the players, Salty B being the esport manager of Ubisoft, and they're having 3 meetings with the spokespersons of the players. They're not listening to the communication from the other part. So I guess they also, last time it was that they have communication problems going out, but now maybe they have communication problems going in. So I guess if you want to say they have a bigger communication problem overall, I'm not going to argue too hard about it. And I'm curious if anybody is really going to do it. And if they are, feel free to address me about it. Feel free to inform me. But I don't know. I guess I don't have the output problem anymore. But sure, everything can be better. And I guess they also agree with that, but maybe not in the same way.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if I can speak for myself and what I feel my problem with the current situation is that I'm beginning to feel more and more disconnected from Nadeo. And it's an important thing as someone who is invested in Trackmania Grandleague. I mean, of course, I would aspire to either cast, play in Trackmania Grandleague, or watch Trackmania Grandleague. So in some form, I am interested in tournament. And of course, I am trying to, as I said, provide whatever feedback I can. I've tried to, I've had talks with Softy directly. I mean, not recently, of course, back in the past. But I mean, if I just give myself as an isolated example in terms of that, there was like through all of the feedback I've ever given to Nadeo. Of course, it has been publicly, so I'm not saying they should address every sort of thing publicly. I have not seen any of my complaints ever being addressed, right? So never has Hillis or Softy then, replied to it and said, look, this, that, and the next thing, this is what we want to do about it, or this is why we don't agree, or something like that. So I've never seen them comment about it, and I've seen a lot of similar complaints being made, and again having the same issue. Now, the problem is, so if you, I say put myself in my own shoes, that sounds fucking ridiculous, but like, if we kind of talk about what that then means for the person who is then giving the feedback. So I've spent beta season and season 1 being deeply involved in Trackmania Grandleague and giving my best attempts to help the tournament become a better tournament by, as I said, giving structured feedback and everything else like that. I feel like I'm not being listened to. I feel like they don't care what I say. They don't care what I think. So why should I keep giving them feedback? Why should I keep trying to help? Now, fair enough if one person feels that, that's not going to make a big difference, right? But I'm one of more than just myself that has continually been trying to give this feedback and continually is seeing it not being addressed. Like, it looks as if they haven't even seen it. Now, I believe I was in discussions with someone privately about this, and they were arguing the point that that of course I might complain all the time about the points loss, right? And they see my message and they discuss it internally and they think, right, we see what he said, we don't agree with it, we're still going to continue. That's absolutely fine, but I don't know that. All I see is being ignored. I don't see that they've had this discussion. I don't see that they've then thought this over. They've looked at, what might be a better way to do this, if they've considered any of my suggestions whatsoever. So what me and other people who are in a similar position are just seeing radio silence. We're seeing indifference. We're seeing what we interpret to be Nadeo not caring about what we think. Now, Nadeo have always came out and said that they do care, but the problem is that people like myself feel like they're not showing that. Now, to bring this on to, instead of me just having my own fucking sob story about why I'm angry at Trackmania Grandleague and all the rest of that shit, if we kind of bring it into a bit more of a topical point about this, right? So the community has had a very negative reaction to this, right? So the community has been very outspoken in some cases. They have shown that they don't like what's happening, right? The players have shown they don't like what's happening. And the community has been complaining about things like this for quite a time. And as a result, you keep complaining about the same thing for beta season, for season 1, and now for season 2 again, these complaints are either going to get less and less because you're beginning to care less, or they're going to get more and more inflamed because you're getting angrier and angrier that nothing's changing, and you're not, as I said, you're feeling ignored. But you're seeing then the response to this is preaching positivity. Hillis talking about, I can't recall exactly how he worded his tweet, how he feels like it's the positive people who matter to him because they're the people who are going to move forward to him. I've kind of paraphrased that a little bit, as I don't have his tweet in front of me. But the general gist of it is that they're expecting the community to be very positive about, Hillis seems to expect the community to be very positive about this situation when people are very unhappy about it. And I mean, what do you guys think about Hillis's reaction to people's negativity in general through this situation, so to speak, as he has been quite outspoken about this on Twitter? I mean, what do you think about that, Turbo?
I mean, there were a lot of people who were actually addressing their concerns or their opinion about that. So maybe he felt a bit overwhelmed with that. And maybe some people have exaggerated with their negativity, maybe got even in an insulty way. But on the other hand, maybe he has to think why this is the case. Why are people now all of a sudden, everyone is going to that? And you mentioned the point. They feel ignored, and maybe they can only make something happen if they address it in a more mean way. And I mean, how can you address something you're not agreeing with in a positive way? I mean, that's paradox for me. This is not working out, isn't it? I mean, that's like not working. I don't know.
I mean, sure. I mean, you can address something in a not a positive way, but in a correct way. That if you want your negative feeling to get heard, you should always address it in a way that the other one doesn't get offended. If you start insulting someone, if you start essentially calling them names, if you start calling them bullshit, if you somewhat disrespect them, your opinion has so little chance of getting through, because once you attack someone, the natural response, no matter if it's in vocal or if it's physical, is to, okay, I'm going to defend myself, even if it's unintentionally. So if the Trackmania community has a problem with it, they should address it at least in a way that is serious. And to be honest, I think most of the tweets I have seen, and maybe I'm too much inside a bubble that isn't too unserious, that they are maybe addressing it in a serious way. They are trying to be respectful. They are saying it's great what you do about the game, but I want you to change this and that. But the overall feeling, and I guess maybe that is the problem then, that once maybe Ubisoft and Deo gets the feeling about people being displeased, the natural reaction is just to put a fence up and say, and start to build a wall between the community. And if you first start to build that wall and start to somewhat have the community, and then an Adeo, and then eventually it just gets more and more, because the less Ubisoft and Deo listen to the community, the stronger they will voice their opinion. So maybe the guys who was respectful in the first place are then going to be like disrespectful, and then they're going to listen more, and then essentially just the ball just keeps rolling and rolling. I have tried my best, and maybe sometimes I have admitted that I've also been too negative. Maybe I've spoken too soon about certain topics between or before rethinking it. But there are topics in Trackmania that needs to be addressed in a negative manner, because if it doesn't address it in a negative manner, it doesn't improve. That is the overall feedback in life. If you say to everyone who does a job in real life, everything you do is perfect, then they are not going to find room for improvements. The first thing I said to the guy who hired me to do real life journalistic work is that I've never gotten feedback on my articles. I've never felt the room for improvement, because everybody says it's great what you do, but and I asked, is there anything to change? No. So I have never felt that I had the room to improve, and I have always been critical to people that are gonna give me feedback, because then I have points to work on that the outside viewer can see, because it's so easy to get caught in your own head and say, my way is the correct way and nobody else's way is correct. Instead, you should, it's a weird feeling to say it, but sometimes you should see negative messages as positive messages, like the ones once the players released an open letter. I don't know if Ubisoft and they'll see this as positive. I would actually put my money on saying that maybe they didn't see it as positive, at least once you saw actions are taken. But so I would see it as positive because you have players that just wants the best for a competition. They put out things that is going to help the game, to help the competition overall. So sometimes just think that negative things or criticism can help people grow, can help this tournament grow, instead of thinking that every single one in a community should be behind you. Because if every single one is behind you, the ceiling is going to be way less. Because I'm going to go on for a while now, but I have studied organizational management, and the reason why they say you should not work alone, but you should work in a team, is because once you have multiple heads together, you will combine the best of each head. At least if you work as a collective group and a smart group, then you will say maybe he is the best at managing, he is the best at communication, he is the best at being creative, and then you put all of that in together, and then as a group, you're so much stronger than a single guy would present something out to the world. And now you're not 5 guys, but you are a whole community. So if you pick the best feedback from the community, and then again, I would say the players are maybe the most important voice to be heard. If you take the players' voice to be heard in a competition and try to improve the competition, then again to a place where it's the most prestigious tournament in the game, where a player feel that they have the best possible outcome to crown the best player, then that competition is going to grow, then that competition is going to get feedback. So again, it's coming down to criticism is not always negative. Criticism is a way of people telling you that there is room for improvement, and room for improvement in something every single one of us, even if it's personal life, professional life, or whatever, should look for. And I really hope that Ubisoft and Deo is looking at this is a room for improvement, and not like the community is saying that, oh, fuck Trackmania Grandleague, fuck everything, fuck you, Gillies, fuck you, we don't want to see this, because that is not the feedback I get at all. I get the feedback that people really care about Trackmania. I get the feeling that people really care about Trackmania Grandleague, and that is why they speak up, not because they see this as an opportunity to speak up against Gillies, not to speak up against Ubisoft and Deo. So, yeah, if you do this the right way, if you take the feedback the right way, then you have such a good opportunity in Trackmania and then in life overall. I'm glad I didn't disconnect there, because that was an important point. So thank you, Discord. Thank you.
I mean, I completely see what you're saying there, and when we just to kind of supplement your kind of point there, or pardon me, kind of ask something about it now. How do you move forward from this situation, right? Because what we're seeing at the moment is we're seeing the community, not quite at the stage where they're getting their pitchforks out, but the community are very unhappy. As I said, the players have played their card. They've said they're very unhappy. They're not positive. Well, they're not happy. This isn't a positive situation. Now, it's constructive. That's the word I think should be used. Positive means something. People aren't going into talking about Trackmania with a smile on their face at the moment, which is what's really important. So as long as things stay constructive, that's what should be most important at the moment. Now, in terms of positivity for this moving forward, I don't really see it with the community being at odds with what essentially seems to be Gillies at the moment. Now, if these two parties are at odds, Eirik, so Gillies is well, I wouldn't really necessarily say demanding, but Gillies is basically saying that he wants to move forward with positivity. He wants to move forward with people being positive. If he doesn't get that, and the community are unwilling to give that because they don't feel good about the situation, what happens next? Is it I don't know, fucking handbags at dawn? Like, what actually? How can you move forward from this? Do you think? Like, what's the next step to be taken?
I mean, that comes down to what really is behind Gillies' phrasing by positive people, because if you see then the Trackmania Grandleague players as negative, then you're moving into the future without the best players, and then you're left with a competitive field of essentially just French players. So I guess I need to more understand what he means by positive people, but if it's like I just want people to respond to what Ubisoft and Dell is doing in a positive way, unless we are not going to listen to you, then again it's going to come down to the sort of segment I had just that. Then you're not allowing you to grow in the best possible way. You're not allowing other people to suggest stuff that you can improve on. So essentially, the outcome is then gonna be worse. So I hope they doesn't mean that they will only have quote unquote positive people that is just gonna be like, yeah, Trackmania Grandleague is fantastic, Trackmania Grandleague is great, and stuff like that, but also allows people to come with constructive feedback or positive, negative feedback. I don't know how to phrase it correctly, but I don't hope it's going to be maybe in the way you mentioned that it's just going to be people who are speaking positively and supporting every single decision, because again, I had a whole point about then you doesn't really allow yourself to grow in the best possible way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Turbo, what do you think about how you kind of move? Like, I suppose the main point which we would like to, I say we, me, the main point that I believe has been kind of at least talked about. I understand Phoebe's getting more involved with Nadeo going forward, but the main point at the very least is now on the lips now is positivity, of course, and in a sense moving forward, right? How do you feel the situation moves forward with this when, as I said, the players are at odds with Nadeo, when the community is at odds with Gillies, and when it's getting to the point where, I mean, people are, I mean, I'm certainly not innocent of it. I'm certainly not innocent of it. I've posted memes myself and everything like that. But when it's getting to the point where people are making fun of the situation, you know, people are making fun of, you know, some of the things that Gillies is saying, when people are being infuriated by some of the things that Gillies is saying, when Gillies is being very as feeling very negative about some of the things that people are saying, yet they're both seemingly demanding something from the other party that the other party doesn't want to give. You know, how do you see this moving forward?
I mean, the solution for me is so simple. Just communicate. I mean, you can solve every problem by communicate, and then also like standing out or like quoting out your point and say what is disturbing you, and then Gillies could also say, yeah, this was the point that really bugged me or that really triggered me or whatever, and then they can eventually like find a solution. But the solution can't be found when people are just furiously typing something on Twitter, because there is not an in-depth conversation going on. So I think it should be happening in some sort of Discord call or something like that, where especially maybe the Trackmania Grandleague players, maybe Spam and Kappa with that, and then Gillies and Softy talk about that in a constructive way. And the feedback that has happened throughout that, or most of that, was constructive. So I think it's an important point that they shouldn't see the feedback that is happening, or like whatever the things you said maybe as well, Paul. I mean, that was constructive feedback, but it was nothing negative for me. There was also a point that has come up into the chat that constructive feedback is always positive, because with that you can develop the tournament and you can develop everything with that. So I think it's an important point that they have to understand.
Mm-hmm. I mean, kind of moving on. I mean, I know we've kind of touched on a lot of the major kind of points for this. I mean, I don't really feel there's much more we can kind of go into other than how we do move forward and things like that. And I mean, we've talked about what we would like to kind of see going forward, you know, what we think should happen. But I mean, for example, Eirik, do you imagine by time of Trackmania Grandleague starting, we're going to have seen any changes, either in terms of the actual tournament itself or in terms of, you know, new links being opened up between both parties that are at odds with each other. We're going to see the players having said about, you know, we're going to have the players, you know, bringing out another statement or something like that. What do you see for the next month for Trackmania Grandleague?
If the question is if I'm seeing any changes, then no. I see simply now I think the players will be like, okay, fine, let's just play it. Let's just do it. And I don't see any updates coming up. I think the update or the biggest chance of an update was after the public letter. And once they actually announced that they will do some changes, I think it will be in some way harder to do an update now. Not because it's harder to write it in words, but now you don't have that public pressure against you. Even though it's still some pressure against you, it's by far not as much as it was once it was released, the public letter. So I don't think there is going to be any changes regarding the format, nor any players. I'm maybe going to be surprised that maybe some players are going to speak up themselves, but I don't think they're going to form another union. But at this point in Trackmania, I mean, everything can happen. I didn't see 16 players signing up the letter in the first place, so
Yeah, me neither.
So yeah, I can just promise that I will cover it. That is what I always do. I don't like to promise things I cannot keep, but I like to promise that I can at least be a place where people can stay up to date. So even though we do this weekly, and some people said in the start that it's not enough topics in Trackmania to do a podcast every week, I mean, now we should have more or less have it daily, because things are changing so fast in this game. I mean, I made 4 or 5 videos about this topic from the last time we had a podcast. So things are changing fast, but I don't think there are going to be as big changes into the future.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just to kind of, you know, ask you something a little bit different, Turbo, but still in terms of how we move forward, and it's been based upon a few points, or rather a few questions that Phoebe's been mentioning. So I said, I understand Phoebe's been getting more involved with Nadeo as essentially to be a link between the players and Nadeo itself, to essentially help contribute, help be a positive impact in the relationship between the community and Nadeo, which has been a bit of a fractured relationship, especially recently. Now, not that I'm just simply looking to kind of, you know, well, I suppose in a sense we are in a bit, but how would you? So now that we know that role exists, we know we do have someone like Phoebe who has been asked or employed by Nadeo to be the middle group, you know, be the middle ground between community and Nadeo, you know. How so? As Phoebe kind of put it, so what she's put is, what would you like to do, or to be able to do, to be a positive impact on moving things in the right direction? I mean, either through yourself. What would you like to see someone like Nadeo, the community, or someone in Phoebe's role doing? What do you want to see to bring about a positive impact in Trackmania? And it's something I put to you, Eirik, as well. But what do you think, Turbo?
I think we are here in our player bubble, and they are in their developer bubble. So there needs to be a middleman. And I think a very important point is that Nadeo, or also us from the community, or like anyone else there, shouldn't get things in the wrong mouth, so that they get explained by a middleman that is really important to get the meaning across. Because in the age from on the internet, we have the problem that nonverbal communication is falling apart, and we can't really see the gist. I mean, you can be ironic, but you can't see it from a text message. So you really have to explain in a serious matter how things are like meant. And if it's an important thing, then it should be very important to address it in a proper way. And I think Phoebe is, very good for that, actually. So I just want to praise her a little bit, and I think it's a really nice person to pick there. But I think that this is a very important task to do. and also like to speak out the concerns from the community, to like have maybe a Discord or anything like that where people can put in their feedback or their questions or anything like that that should be maybe considered, and then also get some sort of like justification or some sort of answer from Nadeo that has not happened beforehand.
I mean, if the question is, I see now the chat. I was busy somewhat looking at the Kameto Corp Cup, but now I see the question: what do you think you could do that would improve things going forward? I mean, then again, it's going to be like a problem of living in my own head, because I spend pretty much every day on my free time trying to help this game grow. That is why I essentially started going to events, because I do everything with the feeling of trying to help the game. Most of the time I try to be positive. Most of the time I try to put out the positive news instead of negative news, simply because I also think in the end, positive feeling is going to help it. But I also have some sort of role in Trackmania as being a guy that is covering what is happening. So I think, and this is probably something that I can improve, but I think I'm doing what I can do. But I need other people's help to then grow again, because I spend pretty much all the time trying to improve Trackmania. I try every single time to help this game moving forward, but maybe someone else would say that your role as a journalist can be done this way. Maybe you can do interviews with this guy or make a video about this thing. So what essentially I could do going into the future is the same as I have done, or wait until someone hits me up and say if they have something else. But I guess I try already my best to help this game. So we are not the lazy people in Trackmania that doesn't try to help it, at least. I mean, at least not me. I mean, community person of the year. Hello.
Yeah, and his own award show. But but I mean, if I can ask you that a bit of a different way as well, just so it's not kind of, looking at it personally, like what could you do, so to speak, or what could I do, or what could Turbo do? What would you like to see other people doing, or be it Nadeo doing, be it community members doing, be it someone, as I said, in Phoebe's role doing, a middleman? What would you like to see done?
I guess there's a bigger topic again, communication. We mentioned it again. It's going to be an example of what Fall Guys is doing. It's even if times are hard in the game, you should tell the community what is hard, about the feelings, simply because then you are transparent and you show the people that you care about it. So I guess if that is going to change, the community is going to follow behind, because then they feel that they are taken care of, and then essentially you create a positive atmosphere in the community. You create a positive feeling between the community and Ubisoft Nadeo that maybe doesn't feel as it is right now. At least if a casual viewer just joins today's podcast and is listening about Trackmania, then it would feel that everything is like an ice block between it. So if I could change one thing, I have changed it or mentioned it in the past. Like every time we have mentioned it, it's communication. But other people, once again, I'm the only one who is somewhat of a journalist or a media member. Why don't other people step up and try to do the same? People are mentioning that I now have a voice in Trackmania. I should think about what I say. I should think about how I phrase myself. But in the end, I'm not a spokesperson for Trackmania. I'm a journalist that sometimes I can pick a side because I want to put a spotlight on a case. A journalism is not always to tell the objective truth. It's to tell the a personal objective truth. I don't know if that makes sense. It makes sense once I'm telling it in Norwegian, but sometimes you tell the objective truth for, let's say, the players. They might have an own feeling about what the objective truth is, or what is their truth compared to what Ubisoft Nadeo is. So sometimes I will pick a side in a story, and maybe this time I picked the side of the players, because I wanted to voice that opinion, simply because it's such a special time. And other times I will voice the opinion of Ubisoft Nadeo, but it's hard being the only guy who is trying to do it. So if there was more people, then maybe I would be even more ballsy about my sort of angle and sort of spotlight in disagreement like this, because now I feel I have to somewhat still play on both sides, and that is not always the best things. If you want to address a problem, then you should, in some way at least, not pick a side, but try to tell the story about the other side. So people step up, try to do interviews, try to do a podcast. There are like 3 podcasts in Trackmania. I do all 3 of them. You guys are joining me on one of them. The other one's on Trackmania Live, and then my own Trackmania podcast. So just start doing interviews. It's not hard. I can do it. And look at my Discord. I mean, please listen to my English. I mean, I don't play Trackmania even, and I'm still doing it. So everybody can do it, and it's not hard. If you ask Trackmania players for an interview, they will say yes because they want to help Trackmania. They want to help you if you help Trackmania. So I'm curious if 2020 is going to bring some new podcast or interviewers into Trackmania.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's about all I had for today's kind of topic. I mean, at least before everyone else falls asleep, as we are kind of breaking our own records in terms of how long we've had this going for. But Denny, if you guys have any other points you wanted to raise about current situation or anything like that?
I talk briefly about it. It was some sort of in the introduction. We haven't talked too much about the Trackmania World Cup, but what do you think the implementation of Trackmania World Cup would mean for Trackmania Grandleague? Because Trackmania Grandleague then again released the trailer today saying that it's the most prestigious tournament. But do you guys think that Trackmania Grandleague will now still be the most prestigious tournament, or is the upcoming Trackmania World Cup gonna be the most prestigious tournament viewed by the players and the community?
Well, I mean, you can release a video and say fucking, I don't know, ALM Cup is the most prestigious tournament, but that doesn't make it so. I mean,
the reason why I say it is not because they posted it themselves, but also for people that don't know, I have done interviews with pretty much every single player before the Soreto Cup, and they said, I asked Carl Jr., I asked pretty much everyone, if you could pick an event to win, they said Trackmania Grandleague. So, but yeah, go on. Just want to give the casual fans that we don't have, but in our chat, that some sort of history feedback about why I call it the most prestigious tournament.
Sure, but I mean, in terms of that, I mean, it's what decides what's the most prestigious tournament comes into a lot more circumstance than just, you know, when it was brought in, or what it's a lot of circumstance. You know, who plays it, you know, the kind of the stage it's under, so to speak. I mean, the stakes that are at place, you know, prize money, you know, if it's if there's a lot of, as I say, if there's a lot of great players in it, so there's a lot of storylines going into it. I mean, that's what makes an event prestigious for me. Like, for example, the From Zero to Hero Cup was a lot more significant than you would have expected a tournament that has €1,000 prize money for me, for example, as you had essentially having a storyline such as being one of the last tech tournaments, one of the last big tech tournaments, and one of the last big tournaments for Trackmania 2 Stadium. And all of the players from past and present coming in to play this sort of event, making it more prestigious just simply by kind of lending their own kind of power to it, so to speak. So I think that with the Trackmania World Cup or World Championship, whatever the fuck it's called,
Trackmania Grandleague World Cup.
That's a mouthful. But yeah, I think it now being brought back, I mean, they talk about it coming back as a little bit of an old friend. Like, this is not connected to anything we've really done in Trackmania before. But what I'm interested to see with this, be it more prestigious or not, I think is a little bit too early to tell since we don't know everything about it yet. I mean, we know basic format about it and things like that. But we've yet to see, you know, final decisions being made on it. For example, if it's even going to be online or a LAN event, you know, final prize pools and things like that, who's actually end up going to be playing it, like, you know, who eventually qualifies, what the streaming rules are going to be. So if we're going to see, you know, a lot, you know, thousands and thousands of people playing it, like there's so much things you can then take into this. But I'm looking at Trackmania, you know, whatever the fuck it's called, the new cup. I'm looking at this being a test to see, because it's going to be under TMGL maps with a lot of TMGL players, because 8 of them are guaranteed for fucking some reason. But what I'm looking for this to see is if this turns out to be more entertaining than all of these quirky kind of messed up, well, not messed up, that's a bit unfair, all these quirky kind of different point systems they're trying, all these champions mode, all these weird playoffs mode. If your typical traditional cup mode tournament can work very well with these sort of maps and people can still enjoy it. That's what I'm waiting to see, and that's what will make it more interesting for me moving forward. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to be looking at it thinking, oh, you know, it's got a fucking €10,000 prize money. I'm maybe more interested in that now. I'm going to be interested to see just how it stacks up against Trackmania Grandleague in general.
Yeah, indeed, that was my point as well, to see the exact comparison between that. I mean, you can say prestigious in terms of viewership. This will be the Raider Cup next year. You can say the cash prize or anything like that. But I think it will all depend what is more successful or what is the most exciting event. Is it the Trackmania World Cup or Trackmania Grandleague World Cup? I don't know, or the playoffs of that thing. So I'm definitely on your side with that. But I mean, just to put it in the perspective. So is it the third test of, is it the third beta season now, or is it feeling for you like the second season? Because they are still trying things out. We had changes in the Open Grand League as well, with point distribution for the first place, and everything like that is different. We only have one top match and like that. So things have changed again throughout from season 1 to season 2 in any regards.
I'm not really sure whether it feels more like a beta season for me, because I don't know what the finished product is. You know, if this is their final idea, then it's. I looked at thinking, you know, I don't really see them going out on a limb and testing too much with this, but I'm not really sure how I would kind of look at that, whether I'd feel it's a second season or a third beta season. And I know some people feel a little bit more strongly to it, but I'm a bit more indifferent about that. The name doesn't mean as much.
Yeah,
Alright.
same. As long as the 16 best players, and I think this lineup for Trackmania Grandleague is the strongest that you've ever seen. So even though we disagree with the format, even though we disagree with maybe how it's coming down to a format, then at least the 16 players in Trackmania Grandleague is going to be the best. And once again, as a selfish Trackmania fan, I'm then going to care who is playing it, and that's also what the players, I think, care about. If Carl Jr. is on the line, there is going to be some extra motivation for other people to beat him. Now Carl Jr. was beaten by Gwen in CLT Cup, so he's going to have more motivation because he can beat Gwen in this cup. So the players are at least going to be motivated to beat each other, even though they might not be as motivated to play the format himself. But just now that I expected myself to be tired after 2 hours and essentially working so long. But one thing that was coming up to my mind was I was driving home from work today was, okay, they announced the World Cup. They also announced the Winter 2021 season, but they also announced every single date. So are they, all the dates then going to be online? Are they going to be, okay, 2021 is also going to be no LAN events? Or that open to change in case the COVID-19 situation change? Because if it's going to be another online year, I don't see, because my main role in Trackmania is to go to events to interview people. So, I mean, you don't need me anymore, I suppose. But are you surprised by they actually announcing every single date and saying that the playoff for the Winter 2021 season will also just take place one day, and then the playoff for the World Cup will also take just place on one day? Did you notice it, or have you thought about it? Or
I noticed it, but I didn't think too much about it, because Nadal have kind of had a habit of, well, not necessarily a habit, but they've got a tendency, whereas if they want to change something, they'll just change it. It doesn't matter what they've announced before, you know? It doesn't matter what they've said before. If they want to change something, they'll just do it. You know, it doesn't matter what the rule book says. If they want to change this date because of, you know, another event happening, or they want to change this date so it'll better fit in for LAN event, they'll just do it. You know, that's to me, it's just as open and shut as that.
Yeah, I mean, true that. And I mean, maybe they have something planned with the dates. We don't know. And actually, it's a point where I have not really thinking about too much. So yeah, I think we will see. Maybe some things will get announced, some things will get changed. We will definitely see in the future. But yeah, it's definitely weird that everything has gotten announced already.
But I do understand there is somewhere where people might get a few more answers, Eirik, if I'm correct.
Oh yeah, fuck. Thank you. It's good to have some friends keeping your back or protecting your back. I'm too bad at English phrases, but anyway, I'm gonna announce something here for the people that listen to actually 2 hours. Is that on Thursday you will have the chance to actually ask a question to Ubisoft Ondeo. Once again, I don't know how many times he has been on my podcast. It's Mr. Softy B. He had the record for a long time, being the guy who was the longest on the podcast. So he's not shy once it comes to speaking and actually answering the questions from the community. Now he once again said that, okay, I can come onto your podcast. I can answer the questions that the community might have, and they can ask it in chat. If he doesn't read it, I will ask him through it. So I will get my questions answered. I will get the questions that I have seen the community raise, but you will also have the chance of getting your direct questions asked to Softy and then answered by Ubisoft Ondeo and then the esport manager of Ubisoft Ondeo about how did we even come to a situation like this. It's going to take place on Thursday at 20 CST. So if you play True Talent Cup, no, it's RIP, right? So yeah, you don't have any excuse left. So you have to watch me, Eirik Holdal, on YouTube there. And if you want more information, if there is going to be any changes, follow me on Twitter, and I will let you know. And if you have any questions to Softy already, let me know. But sometimes I'm good at asking people to send me in questions, but I'm really bad at actually bringing them up once I'm doing the interview, because then I'm so much inside my own bubble and then reading the chat. So the best way will actually just to be and join it and send the questions in chat. And I hope you guys also do that and don't ask me a question now, because my head is somewhat working but not working, so I will not bring it.
And that's without alcohol. But I mean, by no means is this topic done, as we said. I mean, this is, as we always like to say about Trackmania Grandleague, it is a developing situation. I mean, no doubt when we get updates, we'll be featuring it in our weekly podcasts as always. I mean, and of course, if you want to see more about it, check out Eirik's social links for updates on that. And in general, guys, keep an eye on all of our kind of social links for updates about our future episodes of Let's Talk Trackmania. If you want to hit us up with any further questions you guys have, or if you guys have any topics you want us to tackle, then any feedback, anything like that, we'll be happy to entertain it in whatever form it does come in. But I think clocking in at 2 hours is good enough for us, guys. I mean, I think Erwin's probably fallen asleep behind the scenes. But I mean, what I can at least say is, of course, thank you to you guys for joining me for the 2 hours. Thank you for not just letting me have a 2 hour rant, which is probably a good thing rather than a bad thing. Thank you, everyone, always for all the communication and chat and giving us all the, all your thoughts on it. But also, I'd just like to mention, as I did at the start of the episode, that, of course, these episodes are brought to you by ESAC. And, of course, they are now essentially, I suppose you could always say, open for business, open for everyone to check out at esac.gg if you're interested in essentially how tournaments, I suppose, are going to work going forward, as well, at least I'd like to hope. So if you're a tournament organizer, if you're interested in just simply playing tournaments or anything like that and how it may look going forward, if you're fucking sick of tournament like me, then check out esac.gg and check us out next week, guys. We should be here next week. Same time, same place, with these two beautiful faces beside me. And well, maybe not. Maybe not.
That was the best DC today.
Yeah, maybe not anymore, as Eirik's decided to fucking bail on us early. But again, guys, thank you very much for joining us once again, and I hope very much to see you all next week and for the following week. We're not going anywhere, at least for now. But thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you guys have a spectacular evening and rest of your week until we see you again. But goodbye for now.
Goodbye.